Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopefully elect of Israel. You Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians. Gotta give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His name is Yahweh, not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Ahia. His name is Yahweh. His only begotten son name is Yahweh Shai. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christus, not Yeshaya. It's Yahweh Shai. So got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Bahashem, Rekah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well. And a sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akbar who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah, coming at you another lesson in truth, facts, faith, and edification, another daily edification. Lord's willing, let's be edifying. And start with the apostles of Great Millstone on down to the youngest brother. We're continually pushing, letting you know that the Rfid microchip is the mark of the beast. Continually, as the scriptures say. And we're going to continue to do so because we are in the time of this major prophecy, Revelation 13 and 16, when he calls of all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark. Who is the he? The Edomites, the elites. And we're continuing to tell you they are pushing this coronavirus and everything else to lead the world to a one world currency. Lord's willing, this be edifying.
An economic collapse of biblical proportion resulting in cashless society. Cash to soon be illegal with the excuse that it carries viruses. This is the next stage in the globalist plan. Digital currency. They can control it, track it, and most importantly, take it away from you in the blink of an eye. This pandemic is working like a charm for the globalists. The global elites are building their one world currency system and one world government right in front of your face and openly admitting to it. You're screwed either way. Have the money in the bank, risk a banking holiday, or them freezing your funds. Have cash on hand. They'll tell you it's a spreader of the virus. Pure genius in trying to ban cash. Using the virus as an excuse. Can't store cash under the mattress in case of bail-ins. This is the new America unfolding. Order out of chaos. The quickest way to bring about chaos is bombarding the population with decisions, scenarios, catastrophic events, rights violations, monetary instability, and quite possibly food supply. This virus is a curtain to cover up all the government is doing, but we are peeking and seeing it all. Digital currency is how they will change us off the petrodollar. Say hello to one world currency and new world order. It's all about skimming. All taxes will be collected on every digital transaction. They will even eliminate the IRS, and the people will cheer only to pay even more with digital tax collection. Right now, less than 5% of US dollars in circulation is in the form of bills. The rest is electronic. The swamp wants a cryptocurrency like the Bitcoin, so they would be able to track transactions regardless of each bank's privacy policy. The swamp wants it to control the elite to prevent any chance of a revolution. Please remember that all electronic currency riding the blockchain requires internet to use for a platform of exchange from one party to another, whether government, corporation, or person. Each person will be required to offer up their biometrics to access the internet to buy and sell on the blockchain in the very near future. Thus fulfilling Revelation chapter 13. The hideous beast is rising out of the sea. This is what the last days is supposed to look like. We're there. This is getting to the point where we will all have a chip implanted, and we can scan our wrist to pay.
The beast is already here. The beast is EU and NATO. That's who the beast represents. And North America is the scarlet that sits on the... And North America is the harlot that sits on the scarlet colored beast. The whore.
If only everyone would go into the banks and clean out their accounts like they do supermarkets and watch how quickly the banks will close because they haven't got any money. And see how much of a scam the global economy really is that is purely based on debt. With this current situation, the governments are dishing out trillions of dollars, yet one has to question, where exactly are the banks getting all this money from? What I want to know is when markets crash with billions of dollars, where does all this money go? It can't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. Otherwise, that money and values never existed to begin with. We are at a dark and historic turning point. And things are going to get worse. I got wind of a person with inside info of the government mandating a nationwide shutdown along with a closure of the stock market next week, this whole Justice Department. The Department of Justice has no interest in justice. Its interest is in control, total, boot on your throat control. How are we ever going to have a one-world government without a global crisis that necessitates centralized authoritarian controls? Problem, reaction, solution. Like they have always said, never let a crisis go to waste. This will change everything. It will never be the same. Welcome to the New World Order. They are bringing in the mark of the beast. Without the mark, you can't buy or sell. That's the plan, but they underestimate their enemy. The globalists are attempting to sell us on slavery by packaging it as free markets. The solution is to not use the systems they promote and be ready to fight tooth and nail for real decentralization. Force the slowdown, or you will become an even bigger slave than you already are. When the endgame of the usurious fiat scam system we now live under plays itself out, we must not allow them to chain us all into any world crypto cashless baseless monetary system. We must fight tooth and nail against the implementation of this evil idea. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. Please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels. I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you. Everything is speeding up, and it's amazing to see that people don't even see this, how the storm is here and it's going to get really bad. People do desperate things during desperate times. Got news for you, the world is on edge and we are just at the beginning. If you haven't prepared yourself, do so now with what little is left. Only the people who believe everything is still fine will be the ones who suffer in the end. It never mattered who you voted for, red team or blue team. There is only one team. So long as the central banks are in control. Welcome to the machine. We are now beyond the Orwellian world and into the twilight zone. Socialist and nanny state governments desperately need electronic-only currencies. All they do is drive commerce underground and create black markets, thus the need to eliminate cash in order to make sure they get their tax money to spend on running their massive government business. Understand, you can never have a private transaction with anything outside hard money. Cash and hard money equal privacy and safety. Digital equals all transactions recorded, and your stored capital always easy to confiscate if you are found to be socially bad. The elites feel a need to be the third party in every transaction. Most young people have no grasp of these concepts. I try to explain it whenever I have the chance. All they see in digital banking is convenience. The elites are at war with us. Facebook takes your privacy. Governments take your rights. Banks take your money. Corporations take your jobs. I'm just another worn-out tonsil telling people this. Our politicians are just proxies for their donors' desires. Guaranteed, if the money changers think a cashless society is a good idea, it is just another tool to further enrich the elites and impoverish the remaining 99% of the population. Cashless means digital. Ones and zeros. Nothing you will ever hold in your hand or give to another without the electronic means to do so. You will be totally dependent on the crypto blockchain to determine your balance, and with no dollar to gauge it against, you will have to gauge it against the goods or other things you use it for. And it is gone. Watch the movie Elysium if you want a glimpse of your dystopian future. Spoiler, you ain't included with the elite living on the orbiting space utopia. The elite are insatiably greedy psychopaths that have already stolen most of the global assets for themselves. It doesn't seem coincidental that cryptocurrency surfaces just as faith in fiat dries up. By analogy, I'm reminded of a matador sent out to distract a bull in an arena to keep it from escaping while compatriots frantically shut gates left open. Satoshi Nakamoto seems to be a complex and strategically ambiguous enigma, hardly some dude. The fact that nobody really knows where the hell this stuff came from is telling. And the sheer variety popping up practically overnight might be recognized as deliberate seeding, garden style, to see what thrives and what doesn't, and why. I have yet to find an apologist who can explain cryptocurrency satisfactorily in any way that eliminates its potential for weaponization. The dollar collapse will be replaced by a government bit, which will, of course, be worth dimes on the dollar, thereby accelerating the gap between the middle class and ultra-wealthy. How we conduct our transactions is a sideshow to what we have left of our current currency balances. The future will be mostly cashless. It's now a race to the next new reserve digital currency. My bet is on China being the forefront of it all. With 1.3 billion ready users, it will inevitably overshadow the rest. Whatever currency the government approves should be avoided like the plague. Blockchain is basically a ledger, and one day a ledger will list everything you have on behalf of the banks and the state. Non-citizenship will occur with the press of the button. Australia is the canary in the coal mine. They will make cash transactions over a certain amount illegal, then lower that amount time after time until there is no cash. Your ledger will, of course, be subject to negative interest rates and will probably, like everything else, be ultimately the Federal Reserve's property. You have to analyze these things from a signals and systems perspective. When you send an impulse through a system, you understand the behavior of the system with respect to an immediate or impulsive change, a shock. India proved to be the first data point in modeling what a nation with 1 billion plus people behaves like. As the USA is soon approaching that number, it was important for the powers to test it on a gullible enough population where cash is still king. That was the real reason behind the demonetization effort of India at the end of 2016. The impulse to the economic system, a temporary elimination of cash while the government rolled out new denominations and replacement banknotes, announced over national television over the course of an hour, resulting in quite the response of at least 2 months of economic what the wickedness. A part of that impulse response was that necessity is the mother of all invention aspect of trying to transact without cash. Fortunately for the powers and the masses, surprise, surprise, the cashless transfer system and app called Paytm happened to exist and somehow magically be ready to scale its usage from the ones of millions to the 100s of millions level. How convenient and commendable of their foresight, huh? The economic, social, and cultural, behavioral response of a cashless system impulse, though not advertised as such, has been extensively modeled and studied by researchers paid by the powers, I am sure. The cash ban converts humans into livestock. If you're useful or make your owner happy, you'll get fed. Otherwise, we must never accept a cash ban under any circumstances. New viruses arrive every day. More than 500,000 die yearly from the flu. COVID-19 is a smokescreen behind which they take away our freedom and independence. Email your congressman, talk to friends, encourage them to do the same, stand up and speak your mind. There are good people in government and even banks, but living in an echo chamber is not conducive to good decisions. Let them hear. If they are allowed to suspend the Constitution, you will never get it back. I don't think you have it now. Just like the globalists censor and ban everyone whose opinions differ from their online currently. They will do the same in a cashless society. They will freeze your assets, steal your credits, and ban you from doing business if you dare to think for yourself and have your own opinions. A cashless society during a power internet outage, fire, hack, EMP, would be as bad as if nuclear bombs hit a few American cities. Going cashless adds risk. To counter the risk, additional measures must be taken. These additional measures are the real goal of eliminating cash. Unless you have gold and silver, bullets, booze, and cigarettes will become tender also in that scenario. Even toilet paper will be money. It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Said Henry Ford. The social credit score will soon follow. Orwell is saying from his grave, I warned you. I want chips with dip. Not in my hand. I can't wait for the government to limit what I can do with my money. Gun control for starters. Food control. Everything control. Rationing, carbon footprint control. Social score control. On and on. A revolt will ensure, or will the sheeple accept their fate? Are you worried yet? I am. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, subscribe.
Hey, this guy going in, man. Going in. Hey, hey, it's all prophecy, man. It's all prophecy.
Hello again, everybody. We here on the News with Rick Sanchez are committed to try and bring you the very latest information. Even more importantly, as we all go through this thing together, the proper context so that you and we together can better understand this story and then apply it to the strange circumstances we all find ourselves in. So here's what we're going to be doing for you. This is a commitment that we're making. We are doubling down, doing whatever it takes to stay on the air and bring you the information that you need on a daily basis. All right, today, let's do this. The global economic situation remains unstable. Wall Street today doing the opposite of what it did yesterday. Today, the market shot down about 1,000 points just as the market opened, and it's pretty much been around 2,000 or so within the last couple of hours. So there's an underlying reason for this. Fear and uncertainty, right? Fear and uncertainty. Those are the big two issues going on right now. They're very human, but they affect things like the global economy. So there's still much that we need to know about what's going on. When are we going to get over the hump with the spread of this virus? How many of us will actually get it? How many of us will die? Why are we being told to stay away from each other when most of us will only feel the symptoms of a flu if we were to get this darn thing? See, there are answers to these questions, important answers. And we're going to get them for you. In fact, before we're going to be doing anything else, we're kicking off our newscast tonight with one of the most renowned experts on global health policy so that he can help us understand this virus at its core and to help you and I understand why it is that our governments are making the decisions that they're making. And we'll ask the question for you, are these the right decisions that they're making for us? By the way, as we get started here, there's one very important update that just crossed within the last 5 or 6 hours. Part of it while we were sleeping. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin has announced what I told you last night was likely to happen, right? Because we knew what the Democrats had offered, so now the White House, the Treasury, essentially is offering this up. Because so much of the business sector in America right now is all but shut down. So many people are being laid off or simply not getting a paycheck, not going to work. The U.S. government, hear me out, the U.S. government will hand out to the American people in the form of a stimulus package $1 trillion in recovery aid. This is the largest stimulus package for Americans in U.S. history. But what's actually in that package? And who's going to get it? And how's it going to affect you? We are going to break this down for you. That's what we're going to do as we cover this story here on the News with Rick Sanchez, where we believe daily, hourly, that it's time to do news again. Okay, here we go. The list of the questions we think you'll be asking tomorrow. Why are we choosing to stop people from getting a virus they will probably get anyway? $1 trillion stimulus. But how do we make sure it goes to the people who really need it? And are Lyft and Uber actually changing their riding policies? We're going to take you through the answers of all of those questions, but let's begin with the why. Why? Why are we making the public health policy decisions to essentially paralyze our society for a virus that for most people is nothing more like the common flu or the cold? That's a very important question. Joining us now is a world-renowned expert in the field of global public health. Dr. Shi Chen is a professor at Yale University whose research has been published in news outlets all over the world. He's joining us because of these conditions from his home in New Haven, Connecticut. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with a series of questions, but I think this is the most important question. Once you have coronavirus, if you get it, don't you immediately develop a immunity to it?
Yeah, for a normal or regular kind of virus, when you contract it, you get immunity for at least weeks or years. But for this virus, we already find some clinical evidence. There are some people after discharge from hospital, they get reinfected. So we are still looking into the evidence whether this is because they are not fully recovered or this is maybe reinfection.
Let's hope it's because they haven't fully recovered. But let me move on to the next question. We're hearing that 95% of the people, or maybe more, who get this strain of the coronavirus are only going to suffer like maybe flu-like symptoms or less. Is that true?
Yeah, I think this number is higher than the reality. From the clinical evidence from China and South Korea, because they have a large volume of patients there, like 80% of them are with no symptom or mild symptoms, but 50% of them will need some hospitalization, and another 5% will really need intensive care unit, which is ICU. So like 20% of them really need hospitalization, but 80% of them they mild symptom or no symptom. It's not 95%; it's 80% from the data shows us.
So, but aren't those numbers very similar, Professor, to what we experience annually with, for example, the flu or even the common cold?
Yeah, that's a great question. The common cold, there will be 5% of people really need very intensive care. So that's the difference, because when really need some this ICU care, that will drag or the overcrowd the hospital system. And we know that if we look at data across countries, even in America, we only have like 35 ICU units per 100,000 people. So that's much less than what can be done to take care of the population for this kind of virus outbreak.
By the way, I just want to let our audience know, we know there's a little bit of an audio glitch, but I think it's good enough that I'm understanding everything the professor's saying, so I trust that you at home can understand as well. So we're going to continue. Do you agree? Let's go to public policy now. Do you agree, Professor, that bars, restaurants, and all these events should be shut down, as all governments are doing? Is that a proper call, given what we know about this virus?
I think so, yeah, because the virus is contracting people, especially through the droplets. And when you are in a indoor condition like a restaurant or bar, so you are not able to avoid the droplets. And also, people may unavoidably touching each other, like handshake. So this is a very dangerous way of infection. So in one word, I think it's very important to implement or enforce social distancing. Try to keep away from the others, but I don't think it's possible in a bar or restaurant.
But don't most tests? I've read estimates, Professor, that say that I don't know 40% of our population, maybe 50%, some go even higher, are going to get this virus one way or another. Isn't that true?
Yeah. Yes, we already passed the stage of containment. Now we can only do mitigation. That means it's already large-scale community transmission. So eventually, like according to estimates from US, from UK, like half of people eventually will get this disease. But the question is how soon they will get. That will make a huge difference. If everyone was getting this in the next couple of weeks, then the hospital system will not be able to respond to such a large volume of patients. But if we flatten the curve to let it go more smoothly, then, and also if we protect those really vulnerable, like with respiratory symptoms, with chronic conditions and older persons, then we can flatten curve and make the best use of the ICU.
So what you just said is, and this is important, and I want our viewers to understand this, half of our population will probably get the coronavirus. So 1 out of every 2 people is going to get it. If there's 4 people in your house, 2 of you are going to get it. So the obvious question I was going to ask you then is, why are we trying to slow it down? Why not just, if that many people are going to get it, why not just go ahead and let it happen? Instead, it seems like we're prolonging the process. And I think what I heard you say is the answer to that is, if we if we do it the other way, we're going to put too big a strain on the hospital system, on the healthcare system. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So this is also why the UK was trying to adapt they call the herd immunity strategy at the beginning. But if you want to adapt this strategy, you will inevitably have like 60% or even higher amount of people are infected, and that will include people who are most vulnerable, and they will need ICU care. So that's why it's very important this long. Eventually, even if everyone, like half of them are getting this infection, but if we can smooth out around the time window, that's much, much better. So that's why in the next step and the second and third step, okay, and was announcing some complementary steps, for example, closing of the nursing homes and trying to have the quarantine for people above age 70. So they need to take care of those vulnerable. Like if all the people who are infected are the younger adults, although there will be like still like 50% or 60%, but most of them will be like just the flu-like symptoms without intensive care or hospitalization.
But we still don't want them all to get sick at one time, even if they're young people, and even if they're not really going to feel the effects. Because what you're saying, is we want them to get sick almost in tiers, right?
Yeah.
We don't want all of them to get sick together. Even if we end up at 50% of the population, you want it to almost be like 15 and then 15 and then 10 till we get there, right? To slow down the progression. Is that what you're saying?
And exactly, and try to avoid those vulnerable population to be exposed to this kind of high risk. Yeah, because if you look at the mortality rate for the older persons, is much higher. It's around like 20% of case fatality rate if it's about 80. So I think it still matters if how we can we avoid exposing the vulnerable population to this risk.
This is a fascinating conversation, by the way. I'm wondering, there's a lot of people I know, and you probably know them too, who are sick, but they're at home not knowing what to do. Some of them don't even know whether they should be tested or where to be tested. Do you perceive this problem as well?
Yes, exactly. Some of my friends also asking. I encourage them to get tested as soon as possible. And in the recent days, and the U.S. have initiated called a private public partnership in order to accelerate the testing. For example, the CVS, pharmacy, Walgreens, they all join this test. So they are converting their parking lots into like test centers. So people can drive in to test and get the results within 3 hours. And I hope this can be rolled out very soon to the whole country.
Yeah, it's a shame it's not actually rolled out yet, but we'll trust that we'll get that going now. We heard the White House today say that they're going to actually expedite that process, so we'll be hoping that happens. Professor, on lethality, will about 2% of us die?
Yeah, so far, it really depends on the preparedness of the health system. Look at Korea, it would be below this number, but if you look at it, it's hard beyond this number. So it really depends on how we prepare. So far in America, it's below 2%. But I would say those in severe conditions, it will eventually, a higher percentage of them will die, so which will push up this number a little bit. So eventually it's
I'm sorry, I hear if you're over 75, if you have immunodiseases, if you have COPD, if you have any kind of lung condition, if you're a chronic smoker, chances are you will be very seriously affected by this or possibly even die. Is that true?
So, yeah, exactly. So that's why it's so important to avoid exposing those vulnerable groups to this virus outbreak. And also, I think one thing we really need to understand, now the testing is very much biased, especially like in Italy, most of people die above age 80. But this is not true because they are only testing those who are older and have severe disease. But this is biased sampling. If you look at South Korea, they have bigger capacity.
The Lord putting a number over on these people,
man. Run thousands of tests. Unlike in America.
How much your mama shot got putting a number on them, man.
For South Korea people is higher for like those ages. So for age 30, people around age 30, 29% of them are infected. So this is do not or
I think we're finally starting to lose the professor. It looks like you're starting to freeze up, Professor. So I think it might be a good time for us to end this conversation. But you know what? You are such a wonderful resource. You are able to explain to us from a scientific standpoint and make us understand what's actually going on with this. And that's invaluable to us and to our listeners and viewers all over the world. So we thank you, Professor. And we hope to be able to talk to you again with more questions as we all get through this. Thank you, my friend.
Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 5. Behold, ye among the heathen, talking to you Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans. Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told to you. Though it be told to you. And we told you, man, starting with the apostles and elders of great millstone. Again, Habakkuk 1 and 5. Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your day, which ye will not believe, though it be told to you. Okay?
Wow. That was something to actually hear from somebody who dedicates his life to this thing and has studied for decades on how these types of epidemics and pandemics affect people. Give us the real skinny, as we like to say, on what the facts are, as opposed to
Straight
all
skinny,
the stuff
man.
that we're constantly hearing out there, and some of which may not sometimes be correct. Let's do this now. Let's jump over to our global coronavirus update desk. Michelle Greenstein is manning it for us to bring us up to date on what we're learning right now. Michelle, what you got?
Well, first of all, Rick, we have news coming out of Italy. The country's National Health Authority is reporting that more than 99% of Italy's coronavirus fatalities were people who suffered from previous medical conditions. This study says that only 0.8% of people had no other known illnesses. So, Rick, what that means is if you have 100 people dying from COVID-19, chances are only one of those people was a healthy person. That's breaking news out of Italy. Now, also in Italy, as we mentioned earlier this week, the entire country is under lockdown, right? In fact, today, the Prime Minister's office said they're evaluating whether or not to extend this lockdown nationwide beyond the beginning of April. And I do have some video that kind of shows what that lockdown means, what it looks like. Here's what the streets of Italy look like right now. This is drone footage showing really popular highways in the country that are usually, as we can imagine, filled with cars. As you can see, it's virtually deserted with really only a few vehicles on the move. So that's Italy. Now let's go to Spain, where people are also banned from leaving their homes unless they're going to work or buying essential supplies or medicine. So with 40 people essentially on house arrest, how does daily life continue, right? Well, take a look at this. This is a couple getting married in their window. Their wedding was planned before the government declared the state of emergency, so when that happened, they decided to go ahead with the ceremonies from the windows of the bride's house. So apparently the bride threw her bouquet as tradition demands, but it's not clear if another guest was able to catch it, and that's what you're looking at right now. Now, Rick, yesterday we talked about
That's
how
crazy.
St. Patrick's Day celebrations were all but canceled in Ireland, right? Well, this weekend is the Persian New Year, and take a look at what the capital of Iran looks like. This is the biggest celebration on the Iranian calendar, and usually these streets are filled with a lot of hectic shoppers, right? But today, most stores are closed, and the store owners who sell things like gifts and decorations and, festive items say they really aren't seeing that many customers. People on the ground say their lives are being disrupted, they're only buying essential, necessary items like food and medicine, and overall leaving their house as little as possible, just like in Italy and in Spain. So that's Iran. We talked about Spain, the number 4 in terms of confirmed cases on Earth. We talked about Iran, which is number 3, and we talked about Italy, which is number 2. So now let's go over to China. One of China's largest food delivery companies now has new rules about how to get their food to customers safely. So the main idea here is reducing person-to-person interaction. So the restaurant doesn't directly come into contact with the delivery person, and the delivery person doesn't come into contact with the customer. Each delivery person also has their temperature taken, and in every single food package, there's actually a safety label with the temperature of the person handling their food. This is like insurance for the customer to know that their food is not contaminated. And also, take a look at this. The company is providing paper boxes to their customers for them to surround themselves while eating. And finally, Rick, to close out, some big news right here from the United States. Macy's is closing all of its stores in the country. This also applies to Bloomingdale's, Blue Mercury, and Macy's Backstage. Now, this will last until the end of the month, and over 100,000 people are employed by this company. But the company is saying it will offer benefits and compensation during this time. But Rick, what I want to bring to our audience and to your attention is that this does not include flex workers, many who are already scheduled for these upcoming weeks. So there's actually a petition that's been circulating online calling for Macy's to pay these workers and saying that most of them actually risked their lives by being in the store the last week while this outbreak was already happening. Here's a quote from that petition. "We have rent, bills, and need to eat and survive like all other people. We are expected to meet the quotas of full-timers and part-timers. Why are we not being compensated as such?" And with that, Rick, I'll kick it back to you.
Hey, Michelle, just one quick thing. I think there's a development having to do with Uber and Lyft as well. A lot of people watching us use Uber and Lyft, and I understand that they've just announced a change in their policy. Is that correct?
That's right. Both Uber and Lyft are saying that you can no longer purchase a shared ride. So if you're in a car, you're going to be the only person in that car in addition to the driver, unless you're coming with someone else, unless you are a couple. So couples can take rides together, but strangers cannot.
I got it. That shared ride option that was on there is being eliminated for the coronavirus crisis. Thank you so much,
serious, man.
Michelle Greenstein, bringing us up to date on all the information. She's going to do so every hour here on the hour. In Italy, there are about 32,000 cases, and they're heading toward 3,000 deaths. In a startling characterization of what's going on there right now, a New York Times reporter interviewed the doctor who's heading up the operation. This is quite a read. With tears in his eyes, he says he's never seen anything like this before. He describes that they're running out of equipment, masks, healthcare workers. The system is so stressed, so strained. It's just so sad to hear what he describes. I have goosebumps as I'm telling you this, but he says people are dying alone in hospitals. Their final days on Earth are in a hospital by themselves inside some kind of ventilator machine. Their families are not allowed to be by their side. No one's allowed to be with them because of the contagions. Just think about that for
Pray not for these people. Hey, it's a part of the Lord's will.
a minute. George Galloway is joining us now. Wow. You know, apparently this is what happens when you let the virus escalate without any proper controls, and the system starts to break down, right?
It's certainly grim. Just to add a note of levity, it's so grim in Italy. Bono has written them a song. I haven't heard it yet. I don't know what good it will do, but he's dedicated it to them. Glastonbury, which is our Woodstock, is cancelled for the summer. That had Paul McCartney and all kinds, Diana Ross, all kinds of top acts cancelled for the summer. The European Football Championships, of course, cancelled. And in the last hour, the British government have announced that our schools are closing. So that's now all our universities, colleges, schools and nurseries. A huge jump in the number of British cases last night, 365 or so new cases. London is the epicenter. People are actually now openly thinking about evacuating their families from the capital, such as the disproportionality in the cases. So I'll be remaining at the front to bring you the news from here. But I am looking, if I can, to get my wife, my pregnant wife, and my small children out of town if I can do so. That's how bad it all is, Rick.
You know, I heard Boris Johnson this morning. I got up and I was able to watch some of his act there in Parliament, and it seemed like here in the United States that the leadership is kind of changing their tune somewhat. People who originally were looking this and doubting, which by the way, I'm not accusing them of, because I think we all were not understanding the significance, are turning the corner now and almost becoming grim in not just their outlook of the situation, but what they're going to do about it. Is that correct?
That's correct, and in fact, Boris Johnson has had to do a complete 180. He has basically now going in the opposite direction to that which he embarked upon just a couple of weeks ago. That's not filling people with confidence. His main challenger, you may recall, Jeremy Hunt, the former health secretary, he's out and about around all the studios saying, "I told you so." And look out for that. I chalk it up on the wall here now. Boris Johnson, if this gets very much worse, could face a challenge internally from his main rival in the leadership race, a man who seems to know more about what he's talking about. An interesting fact also, Rick, Boris Johnson is being outflanked on his left by Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the first man to say that he will look after renters, tenants, just as he will look after people in mortgaged homes that they own. Boris Johnson was very slow on that. He immediately acted on the mortgage holders, but he didn't have anything to say in the last 48 hours about renters, of whom, of course, there are many millions. But Donald Trump is off the mark before him in protecting the rights of tenants. And Joe Biden might well find that Donald Trump outlifts him in the response to this. Early signs of that, I think. And so anyone predicting that Donald Trump's facing defeat because of the coronavirus might have another thing coming.
I think your point's a good one. By the way, what do you make of a disease that anyone under the age of 30 barely gets a flu, if anything, but still is a carrier, and anyone over the age of 75 has a likelihood of dying? What a strange kind of parallel predicament, isn't it? That puts us all in a situation where we wonder what to tell our children and what to tell our parents and grandparents.
Well, Malthus himself could have written that script, couldn't he? It is a virus which is culling the weakest amongst us. And of course, our children now have to be kept away from their grandparents. How's that for a paradox? We're closing the schools. Workers have to find someone to look after their children, but it can't be the grandparents or elderly aunts. It's totally heartbreaking. People are waving to their grandparents through glass windows, unable to go in and visit them and see them. It is, of course, all about the immune systems. You have strong immune systems unless you're very unlucky. When you're young, you have weak ones unless you're very lucky once you're old.
And it's a numbers game. I mean, we're being told that, 2, possibly more percent of our population is going to die as a result of the coronavirus. And of that 2%, the great majority are going to be the elderly. So it's almost like we know what's in front of us. We know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of making the right tactical decisions so it happens in a way that doesn't affect society too badly. And that's what our leaders are up against, George.
Hey, man, this thing is serious, man. So lock it for the infomercial. I should have had it already queued up.
Today I'm announcing action to help New York, California, and Washington ensure that the National Guard can effectively respond to this crisis. The National Guard, these are tremendous people. They're fully on alert. We've signed what we had to sign, and it's been activated. We're dealing also with other states. These states have been hit the hardest. Actually, pretty much by far, you could say the hardest. Everybody can see that. Just look at the numbers. And through FEMA, the federal government will be funding 100% of the cost of deploying National Guard units to carry out approved missions to stop the virus while those governors remain in command. So the governors locally are going to be in command and will be following them, and we hope they can do the job, and I think they will. I spoke with all 3 of the governors today and just a little while ago, and they're very happy with what we're going to be doing because we'll be announcing some other things for those 3 states and some other states where it's hit the hardest. This action will give them maximum flexibility to use the Guard against the virus without having to worry about costs or liability, and freeing up state resources to protect the health and safety of the people in their state. The federal government has deployed hundreds of tons of supplies from our national stockpile to locations with the greatest need. In order to assist in those areas, I approve the state of New York's request for a major disaster declaration, something which Governor Cuomo has been asking for, and which I agree, and we had it done in very rapid fashion. We approved this on Friday evening, and we are working very, very hard to get all of these things not only signed up, but completed and finished and win. The request from the state of Washington for a major disaster declaration was approved just a little while ago, went through the process, and we moved it very quickly. The request from the state of California was just received, and we will have it approved very quickly. We'll be working, I told that to Gavin Newsom, and we're working on getting that done very quickly. It'll be done maybe tonight. We have large quantities of medical equipment and supplies on the way based on all of this to those states, including respirators, surgical masks and gowns, face shields, coveralls, and gloves, with large quantities already delivered to Washington and to New York. In addition to large quantities of supplies, I've also directed FEMA to supply the following: 4 large federal medical stations with 1,000 beds for New York, 8 large federal medical stations with 2,000 beds for California, and 3 large federal medical stations and 4 small federal medical stations with 1,000 beds for the state of Washington.
FEMA camps.
The supplies en route to California,
Police state
delivered within the next 48
is going
hours.
down.
In addition, the naval hospital ship, the USNS Mercy. It's incredible ships. These 2 ships are incredible. One on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, will be deployed to Los Angeles to add emergency surge medical capacity, and they have a tremendous capacity. They are really something. I will say that if you look at some of the things we've been doing, and now those numbers have gone up, and just to be a little bit more exacting, we've done a presidential approval for requests for major disaster declaration for the state of New York. Approval of Title 32 National Guard activation for the state of New York. We're providing all of this at no cost to the governor. I spoke with Governor Cuomo. He's working hard. We're all working hard together. The relationship has really been amazing. But it also enables the governor to provide robust National Guard support to the state. And the 25%, we're going to be waiving that 25% cost. We're picking up, we'll be coordinating, and they'll be doing something with very special people. Mission assignment of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to provide support to build out alternate care sites. They're doing various alternate care sites, which have now been designated by New York. 4 large federal medical stations of 1,000 beds. These are very complex places, actually, with great equipment. And
man, them FEMA camps, man. FEMA camps. Thus, this will be titled RFID Microchips, Police State, Martial Law, Lockdown, man. Lockdown.
Great people.
Hey, NBC News.
Hey, man. Lockdown, man. It's lockdown time. This thing is getting real. Lord willing, edifying. Got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. Bahashem Yahweh Shah. Bahashem Rikah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach well. And a sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the 4 winds of the earth, the entire world waking up the hopeful elect. Lord willing, till next time I say, Shalom.